The majority of aircraft that make up the world's air forces are fighters, designed for aerial supremacy and control. But the ones responsible for inflicting devastating attacks against ground forces and truly changing the face of a war are bombers. Able to carry and deploy a range of ordnance, they're heavier and slower, so usually have ingenious designs to ensure they reach their targets. From those that were instrumental in the mid-20th century to the ones that rule the skies today. It's time to begin today's video. Here are the top 15 most incredible bomber aircraft. Number 15. Boeing B-52 Stratofortress. Designed by Boeing in the late 1940s and first entering service in 1955, the B-52 Stratofortress is still used by the Air Force to this day. It was created to be a long-range strategic bomber, and without airborne refueling, it has a combat range of 8,800 miles, or just over 14,000 kilometers, while carrying a load of up to 70,000 pounds tail turret, until these were removed from all active B-52s in 1991. It's a testament to their design that these aircraft are still in use, and of the 744 that were built between 1952 and 1962, 76 are still operational. Amazingly, after a recent refit, they're expected to continue flying until at least the 2050s before being fully replaced by newer models, meaning they'll have been a major part of the Air Force's aerial strength for over a century. Number 14. Xi'an H-6. Based on the Soviet-designed Tu-16, the Xi'an H-6 was developed in the late 1950s for China's People's Liberation Army Air Force. They first entered service in 1969, and they've continued to be developed since then, with at least 231 still in operation. And the latest variant, the H-6N, is considered to be one of the most effective bombers in the world, thanks to the ability to refuel in flight and to launch cruise missiles. Requiring a 4-person crew, equipped with 6 NR-23 cannons in a remote or manned turrets, and various missiles depending on the mission requirements. With such adaptability, it's no surprise that whenever the Chinese Air Force conducts missions, the H-6 is almost always involved. Number 13. Avro Vulcan. First delivered to the Royal Air Force of the UK in 1956 and remaining in operation until 1984, the Vulcan was a tailless V-wing bomber that was built by the Avro aircraft manufacturer. Designed to operate at high altitudes, the second version of this strategic bomber, which was introduced in 1960, featured state-of-the-art electronic countermeasures and was a critical part of the V-Force, which was the UK's airborne nuclear deterrent during the Cold War. This meant that Vulcans would routinely patrol while equipped with nuclear weapons, but it was also compatible with other ordnance for conventional missions, such as during the Falklands War in 1982. With a 5-person crew made up of a pilot, co-pilot, air electronics officer, low sun or Redbeard bombs, but also up to 21,000 pounds or 9,500 kilos of conventional bombs. It was an incredibly effective aircraft for the RAF, and the only reason the Vulcan was retired was because of the escalating costs and reduced needs for a nuclear-focused bomber with the development of other high-yield weapons. Number 12. General Dynamics F-111 Aardvark. As the Cold War continued to develop, militaries around the world invested heavily in new technologies, and in the United States, this saw the introduction of several new aircraft based on pioneering ideas, like the General Dynamics F-111 Aardvark. Created to be either an attack aircraft or a strategic bomber, the F-111 was one of the first to use variable sweep wings, afterburning turbofan engines and an automated terrain-following radar that allowed high-speed flight at low altitudes. And as with all new bombers at the time, it was capable of carrying nuclear weapons. Mainly used in the United States, but also went on a total of up to 31,500 pounds or 14,300 kilos of missiles and bombs. With a 3,600-mile or 5,900-kilometer range, the F-111 remained a deadly threat for the more than 3 decades it remained in service. Number 11. Sukhoi Su-34. Having first flown in 1990 when it was intended to become part of the Soviet Air Force, but only actually ready to enter service in 2014 in the Russian Air Force, the Sukhoi Su-34, also known as the Fullback, is classified as a supersonic medium-range fighter bomber and strike aircraft. With a 2-person crew, it's 76 feet or 23 meters long and has a wingspan measuring 48 feet or 14 meters across, and it's powered by 2 Saturn afterburning turbofan engines and can reach a top speed of 1,200 miles or 1,900 kilometers per hour over a maximum range of 2,800 miles or 4,500 kilometers. It's armed with a single 30mm autocannon for... Number 10. De Havilland Mosquito. In the late 1930s, as the Second World War intensified, military researchers were dedicated to developing new aircraft that would enable the Allies to take control of the skies. And in November of 1940, the de Havilland Mosquito made its first flight. It entered operational service in the UK Royal Air Force the following year. It would also be produced for the Canadian, Australian, and American Air Forces as well. It was one of the fastest military aircraft to have been designed at that point, and because of material shortages during the war, it was made almost entirely of wood. It was flown by a two-person crew, one as the pilot and the other as the bomb aimer, and measured 44 feet or 13.5 meters long, and 54 feet or 16.5 meters across the wing. It had twin Rolls-Royce Merlin V12 engines that each drove a 3-bladed propeller, and this enabled it to reach a maximum speed of 415 miles or 688 kilometers per hour, over 1,300 miles faster, and able to carry much greater loads. Number 9. Tupolev Tu-22M Backfire. Created by the Moscow-based Tupolev Design Bureau in the 1960s, the Tu-22M, which is known by NATO as the Backfire, is a long-range and strategic maritime bomber. For most of the Cold War, it was these that were responsible for providing theoretical air power against naval targets. In all, 497 were built for exclusive use by the Soviets, and 66 of these aircraft are believed to still be in service today. Measuring 139 feet or 42 meters long, and with a wingspan of up to 112 feet or 34 meters. The variable sweep wing supersonic jet is powered by two Kuznetsov NK-24 afterburning turbofan engines, and can reach a speed of up to 1,200 miles or 1,900 kilometers per hour, over a combat range of 1,600 miles or 2,500 kilometers. They feature a GSH-23 cannon and a remotely controlled tail turret. The manufacturer Avro was responsible for designing a number of influential aircraft during the Second World War by leveraging the latest technology and engineering know-how, and making it possible with the limited resources that were available. In 1941, test pilots conducted the first flight of a new bomber, the Lancaster, and it was ready to enter service in the following year for the Royal Air Forces of the UK, Canada, and Australia. Operated by a 7-person crew with roles that included 2 gunners, a bomb aimer, a radio operator, and a navigator. The Lancaster was 69 feet or 21 meters long and had a wingspan that measured 102 feet or just over 31 meters. It had 4 Rolls-Royce Merlin V12 liquid-cooled piston engines, which drove 3-bladed propellers, and this gave it a maximum speed of 282 miles or 454 kilometers per hour, over a 2,500 mile or 4,000 kilometer range in the right conditions. In terms of weaponry, the Lancaster was designed for use in a time when aerial combat was commonplace. Nighthawk. One of the most desirable features of a bomber is the ability to reach a target without the enemy even knowing, and this led to the development by Lockheed Martin and the U.S. military of stealth technologies. Essentially, using techniques such as aircraft shape and new materials to significantly reduce how likely they are to be picked up on radar. The first aircraft to be built around these ideas was the F-117 Nighthawk. It was introduced into service for the U.S. Air Force in 1983, but it was only officially revealed to the public more than 5 years later. 64 were built, and while they're technically classified as an attack aircraft, the main weapons they carry are bombs and missiles. Operated by just one person, the F-117 is just under 66 feet or 20 meters long and has a wingspan measuring 43 feet or 13 meters. It's powered by 2 General Electric F404 turbofan engines, and these allow for a top speed of 684 miles or 1,100 kilometers per hour, over a range of 1,000 miles or 1,752 and entering service for the Soviet Air Force in 1956. The Tu-95 is an enormous 4-engine strategic bomber and missile platform that's still used by the Russians to this day. More than 500 of them were built, and they're particularly unique in the way that they're propeller-driven and have swept wings, which is something no other mass-produced military aircraft has had. Requiring a crew of either 6 or 7 people, the Tu-95 is 151 feet or 46 meters long and measures 164 feet or 50 meters across the wings. It's powered by 4 Kuznetsov NK-12 turboprop engines that drive 8-bladed contra-rotating propellers and give the aircraft a top speed of 575 miles or 925 kilometers an hour, over a range of 9,300 miles or 15,000 kilometers. They have 2 GSH-23 autocannons in the tail turret, and they can carry up to 33,000 pounds of bombs. including cruise missiles that can be mounted under the wings. The entire fleet is currently undergoing modern service in 1988 with strengthened wings and upgraded attack and targeting systems to allow for low-altitude flying, and 75 were constructed that remain in operation until 2018. The Mirage 2000N requires a two-person crew, and it's 47 feet or 14 meters long, and has a wingspan measuring 29 feet or about 9 meters across. It's powered by a single afterburning turbofan engine that gives the bomber a top speed of 1,400 miles or 2,300 kilometers per hour, and a combat range of 920 miles or about 1,400 kilometers. It's got 9 hardpoints in total, 4 under the fuselage, 4 under the wings, and 1 under the centerline, and these can be fitted with a variety of different bombs or missiles, depending on the mission requirements. They were, though, specifically built to carry the French-made ASMP kerosene-powered ramjet nuclear missile that, once released, would travel at 3 times the speed of sound over a distance of up to 62 miles or 100 kilometers with a 300-kiloton warhead, in effect, and holds the record as being the fastest bomber that's currently in use. It was the last bomber designed under the Soviet Union and has proved to be so effective that there are still several units being built for the Russian Air Force. Measuring 177 feet or 54 meters long, with a wingspan of up to 182 feet or 55 meters, it has variable swept wing design, and is powered by 4 Samara NK321 afterburning turbofan engines. These give it an unbelievable top speed of 1,380 miles or 2,220 kilometers per hour, and a combat range at supersonic speeds of 1,200 miles or 2,000 kilometers, all while carrying up to 99,000 pounds or 45,000 kilos of ordnance that can include nuclear warheads. Number 3. Boeing B-29 Superfortress. Most modern bombers have thankfully never been used to their full capabilities against targets, and there remains just one aircraft that's delivered the most deadly of all weapons per hour and an operational range of up to 3,200 miles or 5,200 kilometers. They would normally have 12 guns in turrets and the ability to carry up to 20,000 pounds or 9,100 kilos of weapons. The Silver Plate project, however, adapted the B-29 by removing the turrets, making the props reversible and adding fuel injection, and it was 2 of these that were responsible for dropping the nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August of 1945. With the introduction of jet aircraft, all B-29s had been retired by 1960, but they'll undoubtedly remain the most important bomber design in our planet's history. Number 2. Rockwell B-1 Lancer. Designed by Rockwell and first used by the U.S. Air Force in 1986, the B-1 Lancer is a supersonic strategic heavy bomber aircraft that was created to fill a perceived gap in the Air Force's capabilities. With a top speed of Mach 1.25 and the ability to carry 50,000 pounds or 23,000 before being given a second chance. Still, the huge outlay for each aircraft meant that only 100 were ever built, and they're all planned to be retired by 2035. Number 1. Northrop Grumman B-2 Spirit. It's probably the most famous bomber in the world, and rightly so, because the Northrop Grumman B-2 Spirit is the most expensive and exquisitely designed aircraft ever built. More commonly known as the stealth bomber, each of the 21 that have been constructed cost an average of $2.5 billion when you take research and development into account. It takes advantage of the latest stealth technologies to make it virtually invisible to enemy radar, and they're all currently still in active operation for the United States Air Force. Measuring 69 feet or 21 meters long, and with a 172-foot or 52-meter wingspan, it's powered by 4 General Electric non-afterburning turbofans, and has a speed of 630 miles or 1,000 kilometers per hour over a range of 6,900 miles to check for dents and damage before being reapplied. For the full stealth effect to work, pilots have sensors to alert them to changing conditions, such as the brightness of the sun and the presence of contrails that will affect the optimal altitude for them to fly at. But even with all these precautions, nothing can be done about them being seen by the naked eye, which is said to be possible at distances of less than 23 miles.